The Crane Wives is a band that has changed me. You probably didn't realise, but a good majority of my original sculptures have been inspired by the folky, upbeat and almost naturistic feelings that I get when I listen to their songs. I could name at least 5 I've made that the Crane Wives have had some minor background influence on, so it's an understatement to say that they have rapidly become one of my favourite bands of all time. As you know from the title, today I have decided to take their newest album, Beyond Beyond Beyond, and bring the cover and its characters into a 3D form. The artwork was made by a Rebecca Green, an absolutely phenomenal artist whose style I adore, and I urge you to go look at what else she has made. It genuinely is adorable. To start off, as you've seen, I rolled a piece of metal wire into a sort of spirally kind of shape, and then I waxed some clay, roll it out, add some clay glue and foil, and coat it in the clay. It's sort of a round circular base, and also later on I will be painting it the same colour as the background of the album. Then I begin to work on the armature of the girl. I put some metal wire into this cork block to hold it still, and then I add foil and more metal wire to build up the legs, torso and arms. Sometimes I add limbs after I've made the main torso, but this time I decided to kind of put them all together and make the form all at once, just to make it so that parts won't fall off or become flimsy over time. I use Super Sculpey foam, which I regularly do now whenever I'm making bodies or heads, as it holds together a little better, and of course we can't forget the guest appearance from Molly. Then I keep adding more clay onto the limbs. Sometimes I will wrap foil around just to bulk it out, but this time I decided to add clay straight to the limbs. Then, after I've baked it, as sort of the under section of the body, I then start to add the clothes. Using Cosclay for things like the sleeves, just in case it gets a little bit too thin and could potentially snap off. With it being Cosclay, it won't, or is less likely to, as if you touch it, it will kind of just bend a little bit instead of just snapping straight off, but of course, with enough force, it can still break off anyways. I add some sort of ruffles and folds in the cloth. Some look better than others, which I kind of have to remove if it doesn't look too great, and then I separate it from the base and also add sort of that puffiness to the top. Now, considering that you've clicked on this video, you're either watching it because you are as obsessed with the Crane Wives as me, or you've watched my other videos and want to watch more. If you don't know the Crane Wives, I'm begging you to go listen to them. To give you a little bit of insight on my feelings towards the band, I'll tell you my experience with listening to them. A few years ago, a song came onto my playlist which had been randomised. The song was Curses, of course, by the Crane Wives. Now, as I do with all bands I stumble across, I listen to the song on repeat, learning it inside and out, and then I slowly moved on to their other songs, my favourites becoming Sleeping Giants, Icarus, Strangle Fig and The Garden. And then, in September 2024, their newest album released. I listened to it all the way through, and since the album came out, I wanted to make this video, but I haven't really found the confidence to make people until now, but that's besides the point. There was one song on the album that stuck to me. Black Hole Fantasy. I have never listened to a song that without fail makes me cry every single time I listen to it. Honestly, the only real explanation I have for that reaction is the lyrics. This song will forever hold a special place in my heart, and if I ever get to hear this song live, I honestly don't know what I'll do with myself. It's beautiful. Believe it or not, it's not actually my all-time favourite song of theirs. It's definitely in the top 3, but again, the reason I hold it so close is the lyrics. Of course, the instrumentals themselves are beyond perfect, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't contribute to my overwhelming emotions about the song too. Anyways, enough about the band, let's go back to sculpting. Since I've started rambling, I have made the head, the hands and the hair, and now I'm going on to make the little dog thing. I'm more of a cat person myself, so I have absolutely no idea what breed this could potentially be, if it even is a dog at all, but I can say for certain that it is adorable. Again, as it's quite a small thing, I decided to use Super Sculpey firm, just so that I can get all of that form in without having to worry about the clay kind of smushing and going all over the place. There's actually something I want to quickly experiment with because the Crayon Wives fandom has a surprisingly strong crossover with another community fan base I'm a part of. So if I just put this on the screen, I wonder if any of you will know what I mean. This might call a certain group of people. I will not be opposed to that. Anyways, I start working on the sort of portal section of the sculpture, pretty much forming it the exact same as I did with the base, using some metal wire, foil, clay glue, and clay. And then I begin working on the little animals that you can find on it. One of them is a swan, one of them is a fox, another is a mouse, and the other one is another sort of bird. Maybe I'm just being dumb, but I have no idea what bird it is, and I've tried searching up different types of like water birds, and I can't quite figure out what it is. But honestly, it might even be one of my favorite parts of the whole sculpture because I just love this little bird. It's a cute little bird. But yeah, you might have noticed that I think probably for one of the first times in a video I used this sort of acrylic plate to make these animals, as I want it to be a flat back, but I don't want to sculpt it directly onto the sort of portal base itself because there's a lot of mixing around and layering, and also I had to keep repositioning pretty much everything on it because getting the proportions right on something that's 3D that has been from something that's 2D can be a little bit difficult. At some angles the sculpture might look slightly off because I don't know really what it would look like from a different angle, so I kind of had to just wing it. But I think it came out all right in the end. And then after the fox, which looks awfully mischievous, I start working on the little mouse. It's a very cute mouse. Again, like the fox, looks slightly mischievous. I don't know what they're up to, but they're up to something. And I use this sort of flat tool to pretty much make all of the details because it creates a nice smooth effect on the surface, which doesn't add any creases. Now, if you see my other videos, you know that I am obsessed with texture, and moving from doing a lot of texture on pretty much everything I make to sculpting something with a substantial lack of texture was a little bit difficult for me because I had to sort of understand how to sculpt something without creases in the clay ruining the smoothness of whatever I'm making, and this sort of flat tool definitely helps with it as it doesn't allow for any folding of the clay, which the silicone tools might do whenever I'm trying to blend things. But yeah, in the end I think I did an okay job, but there are definitely some areas on the flat background that are creased and that have little ridges and bumps that aren't perfectly flat, which does kind of bug me, but I do put resin over it, so in the end you can't really tell. But I do like, I'm a perfectionist, so it kind of does bug me. There are these sort of clouds around the fox. You just saw me make them, and they're like these little swirly things. I don't really know, but they're adorable, so I made them around the fox. And getting them to layer was definitely a challenge because I had to put the fox on top of some of them, but under some others, and then getting them to be kind of the right depth was very difficult. And also making this little tree branch was. I've made trees before, but I usually just make straight leaves, so making, well, it's not technically a branch because it's green, but making a sort of branch-like form was difficult, but I realised that I can just take one long strand of clay and cut it instead of just attaching clay to each other. I do this every video where I start rambling on about something, and you probably have no idea what I'm even talking about at this point, but I know what I'm talking about, so you're gonna have to bear with me, you know. And as I keep making more detail, I add some clay to make these waves, and I blend it in so that it's nice and smooth. And later on, I do a sort of layered colouring when painting it, and I think it looks really cool. But that's later on, that's not right now. Then using Cosclay, because it's bendable and less likely to snap if you touch it. I make these sort of viney bits at the side. Again, don't quite know what kind of plant they would be, but and also at this point you can see that I have made the back. I have textured the back, added the sort of swirlies that were on the front. Just tried to make it look a little bit interesting. What I could have done for the back was make the other side of the portal, which you can see in different illustrations of the album, but I decided to leave it as sort of a mirror of the front because I didn't want it to take away from the front. I don't want it to be a sculpture which, you know, you can look at it from multiple angles. I do want you to just look at it from where you should be looking at it from, but again, it's kind of impossible with something 3D, so I did have to take into account how it looks in every sort of direction. And then after all of this, I do go on to painting. Of course, I haven't fully assembled it yet because I didn't add the background to the base, because I need to do that right at the end just so that I can manage to get all of these little painted details in before attaching it, because then the body will get in the way and then it won't be as clean of a paint job. To make these clean lines, I do use very watered down paint because, again, when it comes to a flat surface, you really need to take great control of your brush, and that can be very difficult when your paint isn't watered down enough. Other people use paint thinner when watering down their paints. I just use water. Some people say that it can lead to a cracking effect. I haven't personally found that. I quite like the effect of watered down paint because it gives a sort of watercolour effect to it. I mean, it's pretty similar, it's just you're watering down paint. It's pretty much what watercolour is at this point, but it's definitely, I prefer doing it than going out of my way to get paint thinner, because I haven't found anything wrong with just watering down paint at the moment, so I'm gonna keep doing it. But if I ever encounter an issue, then fine, I'll go with the paint thinner. Anyways, I'm rambling, none of this matters. I think the texturing on the fox looks perfect. I love it. I love the colouring. I didn't actually quite show the dry brushing effect that I did on the raised areas like the eyelid, the top of the lower thigh sort of area, but I think the shading on the fox is great. I think the shading on most of it is great. Now that I think about it, it's actually probably highlighting, not shading. Not really my smartest moment there. Anyways, on the mouse, I do have to use this very light pink colour for the little toes, snout, ears and tail, and it definitely brings it to life and adds a little touch of colour to something that otherwise would be pretty much completely white. Then on to probably the hardest out of all four of the animals, the goose, swan, duck, quack thing that this is, was difficult because of all of these little spots, and also because the eye was a strange shape and I had to add yellow, black and brown in there, which can definitely be difficult because making teeny tiny thin lines out of black can always go wrong. And it did multiple times, but that doesn't matter to you because I did it off camera, so you do not have to worry about sitting through hours of me trying to paint lines very delicately. Now, because for some reason the exposure on my camera is extremely high, this is not the colour that I painted the skin. This looks pretty much blindingly white. I say that when it is the colour of my skin, but it's not that colour. My camera's really like messing me up here because it does not look like that. Yeah, it's a bit darker than that, but hopefully you'll see it later on when I show you it at the end. But I think my camera has a very hard time picking up lighter colours and darker colours. Like if a colour's too dark, it'll brighten it up so much, but if a colour's too light, it'll start darkening it, and it's really complicated, but yeah. And then when I painted the face, I think this came out so well. When I make faces, right, they're always completely formed. I don't just paint the form on. Like the eyes, usually I would add a little eyeball in and then I would paint the eyeball, but this time I just painted in the details like the mouth and the eyes, and it came out so nice. Same with pretty much every other animal, so I don't know why I'm saying that now, but I love it. I love the effect that it makes. I think it looks, it's a style, it's a very unique style, and it is the style that the artist did, and I just took it into a 3D form and I just love it. I think it came out so well. But at this point I'm pretty much done with the painting process, just adding a few little stars onto the blue base, and then I go into using some resin. Because I only want it on the middle sort of portal section, I have to very delicately kind of spread it out instead of just pouring it straight in and all over, which did make it a bit messy and difficult. But after that dried, I then used some super glue and added these acrylic rods, which are pretty much see-through but not quite, of course, because light and stuff. But I added them in to pre-made holes that I made earlier, same with the base, and then I glued them into the base, and I then found a problem, which was that it started leaning back. So all I did was just sandpaper down some of the paint and glue it on, and it stood up perfectly and no issues at all, and we're completely done. And after 16.5 minutes of this video, I can say that I have turned the Beyond 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 album from the Crane Wives into a 3D sculpture. I've been dying to make this ever since the album came out, and now I want other albums from other bands to do. Let me know what your favourite band is or album, and who knows, maybe one day I'll turn it into a sculpture. Although I have high doubt that they'll ever see this, I want to say thank you to the Crane Wives for making music that has absolutely changed me. And of course thank you to Rebecca Green for creating art that encapsulates the definition of cozy. If you're new here, make sure to go and check out my other videos, because maybe you'll like them if you like D&D, Coraline, Arcane, or even just something original. If you haven't already, that subscribe button is raring to be whacked, and I would appreciate it more than you'd imagine, especially considering we're only 50 away from 1,000. I'll see you all next time. Ta-ta!